Oh, hello, my lovelies. What's up? What's up? I'm so excited. Wake the Fuck Up Wednesdays is back on. So, hey, if you're on, let me know. Kind of type in the comments box or send me some love with some hearts and whatnot. And I'm using Ecamm because it has some better integrations with Mac for like future use. But just one time you have to click the let Ecamm identify me when I make comments because it's a Facebook privacy thing. So when you use a third party, you have to do it. So you just have to do it once. So go ahead and click there. And then that way I can see the love that you're sending. Okay. So I'm going to give people a few minutes to hop on. Um, I'm just checking here to see and make sure that this is working. Anyway, so today I wanted to talk about how to make the most of this one precious life. Okay. And I want to talk about things that make people kind of uncomfortable. Okay. So that's going to be like impermanence and death. Wah, wah. Right? People are like, why am I going to wake the fuck up on Wednesday? Oh, hey, Cara. Why are people going to wake the fuck up on a Wednesday and be like, let's talk about death. Let's talk about impermanence. Well, this being rebel Buddhist and all, one of the things that I used to be confused with when I first started studying Buddhism was like, why are we meditating on death as like one of the first things, right? Why are we meditating on impermanence? And there was a defined path of like meditations to do in what's called the Lamrim, which is like the meditations on the path to enlightenment. And so meditating on the preciousness of this human life, like how fucking rare it is that this happened, right? Like how rare it is that that you were born in this body, on this planet, in this lifetime, in these circumstances, right? Where we have fucking Wi-Fi and all these other kind of like magical tech things. So there's this element of, you know, really understanding that this is a precious gift, not to be wasted. And we read poems about it all the time, right? There's Mary Oliver's like, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? And people are like, yeah, I want to make the most of this life. But think about it. Like, do you really get how special it is to be alive? Right? Do you really get how amazing it is to be on this planet and to have the opportunities that you have to experience all of it, right? To experience love, to experience heartbreak, to experience waterfalls and oceans and glaciers, to experience laughing your ass off and peeing in your pants, to experience hangovers, to experience psilocybin mushrooms, all of it, right? Like, do you get that this is a fucking miracle? Not just that it's cool, that it's like a total miracle. So just think about that for a minute. Like, whoa, I'm so lucky to have woken up today and to have like it's raining right now. I can hear the rain. It's like, it's so awesome just to be able to hear raindrops. Then the fact that we're not going to live forever, right? The fact that we're not going to be around forever and that we don't know when. That is not to me some negative existential crisis, like crazy thing, right? To me, it is a wake up call, a wake the fuck up call to not waste any moment that we have. Like when we have true realization, not just some cognitive awareness, like, yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna be around, like maybe I'll die in 10 years instead of in 40 years or whatever. It's like, no. We don't even know if we're gonna be around tomorrow. But it's like we don't want to think about that, right? We don't want to think about that because we think, oh, it's too depressing or it's too scary, right? But think about all the shit you put off because you are not willing to admit that you have no idea how much longer you have, right? You tolerate a whole lot of bullshit, right? Like, what are you tolerating right now because you think you can fix it later? Like, shaggy carpet, something simple like that. Toxic relationships, right? Not forgiving someone, you know. When people are dying, whether you're the one dying or you have a loved one who's dying, one of the things that comes up is like, oh, I wish I didn't waste so much time being pissed about that thing. Like, does that really matter in the long run? So we waste a lot of time on bullshit, right? So, what can we do? What can we do now to make sure we don't waste time, right? For me, it's like wake up, meditate on how this day, this morning, this moment, now, right now, you listening to me, be fully present with me. Like, let's do this, right? When you're talking to your friend, look in their eyes. Maybe it's the last time you'll see them, right? Whenever you leave the house, hug your family and tell them you love them, like sincerely, not in a passing way, because you never know. When we aren't paying attention to how transient and how impermanent this life is, we waste a whole lot of time, money, and energy, right? So, what happens when you do wake up? So, I'm in this. So, Steve Levine wrote a book called A Year to Live, and it was like taking you through this journey of how would you live your life if you knew you only had 12 more months, right? And sort of like you imagine you have a terminal diagnosis or something. Now, I have had cancer. I've had renal cell carcinoma, which had a 5% 5-year survival rate. So I had that experience, and it was like fucking scary to think about that, right? So this book, and I've always said when I started my coaching business, I was like, look, y'all, the reason I started this was because I want you to not waste this precious life and need something like cancer or another 2x4 hitting you upside the head from the universe to make you wake the fuck up to how precious this life is, how important it is to let go of the bullshit. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying to shame yourself if you're having a hard time forgiving someone. I'm not saying to beat yourself up if you've been traumatized and you're having a hard time getting over it and that it causes you a lot of day-to-day suffering. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying right here, right now, let's be fully present. That's it. Let's not distract ourselves, right? And when we're fully present, we are with the people that we're with. We are living the thing that we're experiencing. We have more awareness. Like, my body is so tight. I am so stressed out. I cannot sleep. I need to take care of myself. I'm going to go do a trip. I'm going to go get a massage. I'm going to have that difficult talk with my partner. I'm going to ask for what I really need. Because what if I die tomorrow? What if I only have a month? What if I only have a year? And then people always kind of argue, right? Like, oh, that's kind of unrealistic to think about it that way, right? They're like, no, like if I think about it that way, then I'm just going to be never planning for the future. I'm never going to have any way to save for retirement or have any kind of schedule or goals in the future. And that's actually not true, right? Like we can have an awareness of our impermanence and still choose to remember that we can plan for the future, but we need to live each moment as if this is all we have. So you can save your money. You can plan to go to grad school and apply, even though you won't start for a year. You can try to plan your business, right? You can do all that kind of shizzle and still wake up today and say, if today was my last day, what's something I could do to make this fully present, fully in integrity with how I want to show up in the world and authentically me? How can I stop hiding my truth? How can I start living fully, right? So if you if you have the ability to type comments there, like let me know, like what today. And if you're watching this later, by the way, you could do like hashtag team replay, and that way I can see that you watched it later. But like, what's something you could do today that would totally help you live more fully, to help you live a life of no regrets? What would that be? So it doesn't have to be quit my job. It doesn't have to be I'm gonna fucking take off for a week and just leave, drop everything, right? But it could be I'm gonna make that phone call. So I'm going to be talking about this on the podcast tomorrow, but what I love here is I can be so much more real with y'all, right? So, what are you doing right now that you're putting on hold? Because one of the things that I see right now is with all of the craziness in the world. And by the way, some people's lives have always been crazy like this. We're like, whoa, shit's really hitting the fan right now. And it's like, you know what? In some countries and in some communities, this shit's going on all the time, right? Like in certain countries, they're struggling with public health issues all the time. In communities, they've been struggling with Black people getting murdered all the time. So don't make like, this is so crazy and I don't know what to do, right? Like this in terms of someone saying here, ring a friend I haven't spoken to in a while. Was just going to say that. Yeah. Car says, eek, this is scary for me right now. It would be having a real heart to heart with my husband about the conflicted feelings I'm experiencing about where we're at. Yeah. That's super scary, right? When we think about, okay, what does it mean? Like sometimes we can think, all right, me having this conversation is going to be very vulnerable. And maybe it's going to cause some suffering in the short term. Like, why bring it up if the day to day is sort of neutral, right? So why do we need to bring it up if things are okay or things are so? And this is exactly right. Like, I'm sure, Cara, that the reason this came up is because deep down you know that just going through the motions without having this discussion is really causing this other type of suffering. Maybe not the difficult conversation suffering, but the I'm not being honest about my truth suffering. And think about what's possible when you turn this shit around. Like, I actually had a patient who had, I think it was a few years ago, he was like, I'm ready for a divorce. Like, I'm going to have a conversation with my wife. I've been putting it off for too long. I think he'd been putting it off for like 5 or 7 years or something. He had this conversation. I mean, he was done. I remember him telling, like, I'm done. I'm ready. I'm finally going to tell her. This is such a big deal, right? So he had the conversation. Do you know what happened? They woke the fuck up. This is 3 years later now. They're in such a good place. It was like this thing where she was like, oh shit, you're for reals. Like you actually want, like you want to leave. What the fuck have I not been listening to? What have I not been seeing? What have I not been hearing? Right? And so he was able to have the conversation, took the big risk, was ready to go, but having the conversation, because he knew he couldn't live that way anymore, actually opened up this whole new chapter in their relationship, right? Kind of like everything changed after that conversation. And let's say it didn't go that well. You're going to be okay too, right? This is why ZG is so important to me, right? Like this radiant inner confidence, right? When we have that radiant inner confidence that we are going to be okay, no matter what, we're willing to take the risks. Because sometimes we think like, well, what about if I'm on my own? Or what if I have no friends? Or what if I don't succeed? What if I fail? Right? Well, yeah, then what if? Like, what if you knew that what you're afraid of is actually an emotion? I mean, it's like, no, I'm afraid of being alone. No, I'm afraid of not having any money to survive. And it's like, but why? Why are you afraid of being alone? Because you don't want to feel a certain way. You don't want to feel lonely or you don't want to feel rejected, right? It's these emotions that we're having or that we don't want to have that drive how we live our days. And when we are afraid to experience all the emotions that we have in this world, when we are afraid to experience discomfort, then we don't live fully, right? Then we hide, then we try to protect ourselves. Like Adyashanti said, like, it's like having a thorn in your thumb and you're like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put a fucking box around this shit and protect it so that I don't bump it on things, right? And I'm gonna do my best, be like, hey, stay away from my thumb, stay away from my thumb. Oh, I'm gonna hide my thumb behind my back. I'm gonna like maybe put a towel over my thumb. I'm gonna do all this shit to protect my thumb instead of be willing to deal with the pain of pulling the shit out, right? It's like when we get to the root cause, which is ultimately we are afraid of feeling hard things, that's where we can start making real progress. Now, there are very real circumstances, right? Like people are in abusive relationships and no one can tell you when it's right to leave. That's up to you, right? People are in financial situations that don't allow them certain freedoms. So, what can we do within that? So Elaine said, I find this scary as well, overbuilding things in my mind. And usually the conversation heals that hole in what has been left unsaid, which is super empowering. Yes, exactly. We can create some fucking stories, right? And then we do it and we're like, that wasn't that bad. Cara says, we hide. Yes, I have a huge box right there. Exactly. But this is human, right? Like, it's not like we're broken. It's not like, did I miss that class, right? It's not like, where was I supposed to learn about this? This is what we do. This is how we roll as humans, right? This is why I have Freedom School. It's sort of like we need to learn these things. It's why I go to my meditation retreats, right? Well, I haven't been to one in a while since COVID, but you know, it's like this is why we practice. This is why we meditate on the preciousness of this human life, on impermanence and death. This is why we go there and say, you know, even though This is hard for me. I trust that there's some wisdom in these people that have been meditating for thousands of years to think about how precious this life is and how it's not going to last forever. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to reflect on that every day and just see how it changes those little decisions you make, right? What you're going to eat, who you're choosing to hang out with, who you invite on your hike or whatever, the conversations you're going to have, the decisions you're going to make, if you exercise or not, if you spend some time outside or not. You know, and you train in being uncomfortable. This is one of the things I'm so grateful for with like my whole mountaineering and climbing experience. It's like I had developed a lot of grit living in a really poor and violent neighborhood. It had the #1 murder rate per capita in the United States of America during the crack years. Hello, like for a chunk of time there, it had a lot of violence going on. I heard gunshots throughout the day and especially throughout the night. Right? People died because bullets were like falling from the sky through their roof and killing them. I mean, it was crazy. So I developed an ability to be in uncomfortable situations, right? Like I'm biracial, half Filipino, half white, but I'm white passing, or at least people think I'm Latina or something that I'm not, like whatever it is. And, you know, like I can walk through a hood and be okay because I've been there, I've done that, right? I've learned how to deal with that level of fear of violence, right? And at the same time, well, and then also I think about like with poverty, like not having what I wanted, not getting what I wanted, like being embarrassed because of the clothes I wore. I got made fun of in high school because I wore a lot of the same things all the time. And I went to a really fancy private school on scholarship. And, you know, I mean, it wasn't the worst kind of making fun of or bullying or whatever, but I felt it and it hurt. It was like people are noticing that I wear the same thing a lot, right? And when I was in elementary school, I had holes in the bottoms of my shoes and I had to line it with toilet paper, is what I did as a kid to protect my feet. But then when it rained, the toilet paper would get wet and it would start trailing behind my shoes and people would make fun of me. And it was like that gave me a lot of grit, right? How to stick through things, even though things weren't the way I wanted them to be. But when I started climbing and when I started heading into the mountains and intentionally making myself uncomfortable, it was like then I could really see my comfort zone expanding. And then I could actually, instead of being in survival mode, like, I got this, I can handle anything, it was like a sense of composure. It was like, oh no, like I can fucking handle anything because I just had a near miss with that avalanche, or I thought I was going to fall and die lead climbing that route, and I didn't. I helped myself keep my shit together, right? And with my meditation practice, it's like, I remember when my dad died, I didn't think this was possible, but I remember my dad died, and I was like, ah, so this is the time. Like, this is what I've been training for. How can I be fully present and sob and cry with him, right? How can I fully be with my grief and understand that this is the way life is? Anybody you love, you don't get to have forever. Either you're going to go or they're going to go, right? Either you're going to leave a relationship or die, one of you, right? And because I'd had that awareness so much before his death, it was so much more manageable, really. Did I feel deep grief? Absolutely. But there wasn't all that fucking regret, right? I should have done this. So, like, what's a regret that you might have right now? Did you treat someone like shit that you feel kind of bad about? Did you say something right? That you regret? Is there something you want to say, love you want to show that you're not doing? So really become aware of that and start to address that, because I want you to live your life fully. I want you to have a life of no regrets, not no hard feelings, not no shitty feelings, but a life of no regrets. So, like in this Year to Live class, one of the things we do every morning is we wake up and we say, like, um, here, let me read it to you. It's the 5 recollections. I'm pulling it up right now because it's on my calendar because I do it every morning. I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have ill health. There's no way to escape having ill health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from them. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground on which I stand. So, for the next year, I'm thinking that in the morning, thinking that at night. And it's like, well, that's kind of fucked up to wake up to. Like if our thoughts can, like some people say, well, Anna, you teach that your thoughts create your reality. Isn't like realizing that shit and focusing on it, making that happen, making yourself sick, making all this happen, etc. Look, thoughts create our feelings, which drive our actions, which create our results. So I could read those things off and you can have certain thoughts like, that's fucked up and scary. Oh my God, like make this go away, right? Or you can have thoughts like, this is going to help me live more fully today because I'm not going to take my health for granted. I'm not going to take this day for granted. I'm not going to take that hug for granted. So it's your thoughts about these facts. Those are facts, y'all. I didn't just make that shit up. Like, we all get sick at some point, whether it's a cold or something more serious. We're all going to die at some point. So will our loved ones. Like, these are facts. So what are your thoughts about those facts? You can totally spin with those, right? You can totally spin with those and use it in a way to feel a shitty emotion, which, yeah, is going to lead to shitty actions. Like, this is so depressing. I'm just going to sit around and smoke fucking cigarettes and like drink whiskey and eat Doritos because we're all going to die. And guess what? You're going to get sick and probably not live as long as you could, right? But if you recognize those facts and say instead, no, life is too short no matter how long. This conversation is going to be hard. I'm going to have this conversation and I'm going to be willing to feel uncomfortable so that I can live my truth. Because what if doing that hard thing made life better? I mean, we don't know, right? But what we do know is we need to live our truth. And you can have difficult conversations in a kind and compassionate way, right? So you can have that conversation and come from a place of kindness and gentleness, and maybe not. Maybe you can also come from a place of fierceness because there's fierce self-compassion too. It depends on sort of what the energy's been like, right? But what I mean to say is whether you're fierce or not doesn't mean you have to be a bitch about it, right? We can tell our truth in a way that is compassionate for the other person receiving it. Because when we are showing up in a way that's out of integrity, when we later are like, why did I say that? That was so mean. Like, that didn't really get my point across. When we're doing that, we're actually not living in integrity. And we're actually still going to have those regrets, right? So I'm going to start wrapping it up. But I want to invite you to change your thoughts about those facts, that we get sick, that we suffer, that we'll die. Like, what if our thoughts about that were like, right? Like Ajahn Chah said, when I know that this glass is already broken, every moment with it is precious. When I know that this body is already broken, every moment I'm in it is so precious. Every time I get to do a yoga pose, right? Like I love, Katie Inman at Anchorage Yoga here, God, I miss her live classes. I love them so much. But it's like, being in class and she'd be like, I just remember being in her class and thinking like, I'm just so grateful that I can move my body this way, that my body is letting me do this, right? It's like we are so present with it all. We can be more mindful because we're not afraid. We don't look away. We don't put the box on. Sure, we can live this numbed out, buffered life, the box around us life protecting us. But, oh yes, Cara, I will post those 5 recollections for sure. So we can experience, right, those hard things and have that be better than numbing out. Because we can either choose to numb out and live a life that's like pretend, like The Matrix, one of my favorite movies, right? Who loves The Matrix, y'all? I want to hear it. I fucking love that movie. I remember when I was taking the GRE, I took it once. I was trying to get into UC San Francisco and they took like 9 people a year in my program. And I did pretty well the first time, but it was a really competitive program. And so I was like, I could probably do a little bit better on the math. So the night before, I just drank a couple glasses of wine and watched The Matrix. And I woke up like, fuck yeah, I can fucking do anything. It's just in my mind, right? And I went in and I fucking styled it. I got almost perfect scores on the logic exam. I mean, it was crazy. So anyway, back to The Matrix. So with The Matrix, it's like, okay, we're living this normal human life. Everything's kind of groovy, but nothing's fucking amazing, right? And then now, do we want the reality of Zion, of the fucking bowels of the earth? I mean, that's up to you. But for me, I don't want to die thinking, I just made that shit up. I thought my relationship was great, but it wasn't. I checked out of life. Sure, that was painful, but then I also missed out on truly experiencing the joy, right? And I don't know about you, but I want to live a real life. I want to know, what is it like to be a human on earth? I want to learn those lessons. And what I found is that the more I learn those lessons, the more amazing my experience of life is. Okay? So I invite you to do the same. Okay? And yes, I'm hearing some love over there about The Matrix. So here's the deal, y'all. I'm actually going to close enrollment to Freedom School for several months. Okay? Because I came back from my trip I was 2 weeks in the mountains and I was like, there are some things I want to shift. And I also would prefer, like, I like the vibe of when a group starts together and kind of moves through it at the same time. And so I'm going to be closing enrollment to Freedom School at the end of this week. So if you've been thinking about it and you're not sure, I'm telling you right now is the time to join. Go to joinfreedomschool.com because I wonder if I can type that in here. I don't know. This whole system's new to me, but I'll get the hang of it. Anyway, so joinfreedomschool.com. I think y'all know how to spell that. And so you can check it out. There's amazing bonuses where you can, if you sign up for a year, get monthly sessions with me one on one for free as part of the dealio. That is not ever going to be offered again as when I open up Freedom School again in the future. So that alone is worth the price of Freedom School. So I think you should do it. Go to joinfreedomschool.com. I'm going to close the cart at the end of the week. Okay. Oh, you are so welcome, Cara. Yeah, very timely. I love that. I love it when I can show up, talk about something that's at the top of my mind, and it's at the top of your mind too. It's like, I love the synchronicity that way. So I hope you found this helpful, right? I hope if you want to dive deeper into this shit. Actually, what's funny is we're doing time management in Freedom School right now. And so, like, it sounds really boring, but it's all based on this shit. It's like, okay, why is it important to have a calendar and to plan your days and to do all that shit? Because if you don't, you end up wasting all this fucking time on Netflix or all this other stuff that's not helpful. So it's like, in Freedom School, we dive into this shit and apply it to real life. So I hope to see you in class, and I'm going to see you here. I'm going to see you here on Wake the Fuck Up Wednesdays. It feels so good to be back. I love you all. Have an amazing day. Have an amazing, wild, and precious life today. Enjoy this moment right now and every moment after. Bye.